But okay.
Yeah, we're good. We are live.
I'll get you before we leave the air, okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It is a glorious Tuesday, and you're listening to WCEG Network. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Log on to WCEGTalkRadio.com or watch us live on your smart TV, on the Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now we're even on Fanbase, Blue Sky, and Twitch. Search WCEG and subscribe to all social media platforms. Please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I am your host, Vincent Cheeks, for Conversations in Education. Please download our free mobile apps, free WCEG mobile app, or you can say, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and the guests and not WCEG Network. As always, thank you, thank you, thank you for your continued support. Okay, we're gonna get into this. Y'all hear that? Y'all hear that? Put your ear to the screen. Happy anniversary, Conversations in Education. 10 years, baby. 10 years. It's the 10-year anniversary show. I am very happy to be here. I couldn't be more elated. As my producer Penny said earlier, time flies when you're having fun. It's been 10 years for my show. This month, next month, roughly, it's been 10 years for WCEG as of this past May. And I just want to thank Penny Rogers, Pastor Penny Rogers, for being the visionary and being the woman that she is to bring this to light and bring this to fruition. I want to thank all of the WCEG hosts, old and new. It's been a long, sweet ride, and I want it to be much, much longer and much, much sweeter. So, again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to the listeners, because without you, there's no me. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. And with that, I want to introduce my guest. She is the president of Southview Cemetery. She was on with us in the end of February, early March. Please show some love and help me welcome Miss Winifred Hemphill. Yes.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, ma'am. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm well. I'm glad to be here and congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. That's an amazing accomplishment and milestone.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's been a journey, like I said, and I have to say, I know Penny remembers this, and I've told this story before, but I haven't told it to you. Um, my very first show that I didn't really go that well. I uh, I upset some of the listeners. I upset my guest that I brought on, my very first guest, who was my friend also, and I hope we're still friends. Um, but yeah, it didn't go the greatest. And afterwards, after my friend chewed me out, I called Penny the next day and I told her, I was like, yeah, I don't really think this is for me. But she did what any good leader would do and put on her leader cap, hand on my shoulder. Vince, you had a very engaging show. She even took the negative and turned it into a positive. You had a very engaging show, and even the ones that were upset, they were engaging with the content. So that's what we call a great show. So I
Okay.
appreciate that, Penny.
You have to persevere sometimes.
Yeah. I persevered, but most importantly, I learned from that first show, and I haven't had any more of those flubs since then. So
And
yeah,
they've still been engaging.
absolutely still been engaging, as you have as well. And we're going to get into some more engagement after I make a couple of quick announcements. Okay. DeKalb County is hosting Human Services Day on September 20th. That is this coming Saturday. It's going to be at the Clarkston Community Center. 3701 College Avenue, Clarkston, Georgia, 30021 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, DeKalb is hosting a Human Services Day at the Clarkston County Community Center. Also, this weekend. Is it this weekend? We have the tour at Southview Cemetery. We're gonna recreate the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. The tour dates are September 21st and September 28th. What is the time, Winnie?
3 o'clock.
3 p.m. is going to be the time. And what we're going to be doing, like I said, we're going to be retelling the story of the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. If you do not know about that, then listen up, tune in. We're going to do a deep dive into that. But first, I'm going to ask Winnie some questions about the cemetery, about the production. Then we'll do a deep dive into the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. All right, Miss Winnie.
Yes, sir.
Please tell our listening audience, what is Southview Cemetery and where exactly is it located?
So Southview Cemetery Association is here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're at 1990 Jonesboro Road, Southeast Atlanta. We're in the Lakewood Heights area, or really about 10 minutes south of downtown and 10 minutes north of the airport. We have been here since 1886.
Okay.
So the cemetery was started by 6 men who were all born enslaved. They wanted a more dignified burial place for their loved ones. There was a cemetery, Oakland Cemetery was the city cemetery at that time, and they had a segregated area for Blacks. And in 1883, Westview opened, and they were said to have a segregated area for African Americans as well.
Okay.
Just like any part of life in 1886, everything was segregated. So
Absolutely.
like our community did in a lot of different instances, they came together, the businessmen came together to try to solve this problem of having a dignified burial place. They met in the basement of Friendship Baptist Church and had this conversation. They decided to go to the local cemeteries and say, can we go in the front entrance? Do we have to be buried in the swamps?
Yeah.
And they were told, no, you cannot go in the front entrance. And yes, you have to be buried in the swamps. So they decided to start a cemetery of their own. My great-grandfather was one of those 6 men, and he came out on Jonesboro Road, which was a long way from Atlanta back then. My father used to say he had to catch the trolley and then walk a mile. But this was dairy farm land.
Okay.
And so he bought a 25-acre dairy farm and intended for it to be Southview Cemetery. And so they petitioned the state for a charter. And when the state investigators went around to the neighboring dairy farms to see if it was okay for this to be an African-American cemetery, the dairy farm said, oh, I heard they buried a Black baby over there, which they had. And they said, well, that land's already tainted. I don't care what you do with it. So it worked in our benefit. We received a charter from the state of Georgia in 1886 on April 21st. And next year on April 21st, we will be 140 years old.
Oh, wow.
140
years old. That is amazing.
Right. Yeah. Those 6 men who founded the cemetery started as a stockholder corporation.
Okay.
Which is amazing to me that, not too far out of slavery, they were born in slavery, to start it as a stockholder corporation and sell shares of stock to people in the Black community so they could invest in the cemetery. And so that it wasn't just the founder's cemetery, it was a cemetery for the whole community.
For the whole community. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I think our community should embrace that business model again, because to be perfectly honest, given where the political atmosphere is headed, we're going to need a lot more of that. We're going to need to lean on each other and learn to trust each other when it comes to business. White supremacy has done a pretty good job of dividing and conquering us to the point where we don't even want to support a Black business, let alone think about co-opting and going in, putting our money
investing in it, right?
which is something that the Jewish community does, the Asian community does, Spanish community does, like every other community but ours, and I think we all know the root of why that is. But again, I think what you say, 1886?
1886.
Have a stockholder company, yeah, that's pretty amazing to is that about 25 years less after slavery? That's
Right. Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
kudos to you and your family. And so that is your connection. Your great grandfather?
My great grandfather.
One of the founders. And I think that's pretty amazing too, for you to have that type of, not only have that type of history in your family, but you're still in charge of the family business, if you will.
Yeah, somebody from the Watts family, which is my maiden name, has been in charge of the cemetery for all of that time. So I feel like it's my honor and my period of time to really be the servant to the cemetery. And so that's what I am. I work with my cousin, and my son works here as well.
Okay, I love it. Keep it in the family. I absolutely love it. So do you have any idea of who you're gonna pass it on to when you're?
We're working on it. We're working on a succession plan.
Okay,
yeah, I don't plan to be here forever.
Okay.
Well, I guess I will actually. I bought my grave here, so.
Okay. Well, we're gonna keep that a top family secret.
Yeah.
And once it happens. You know, we'll stay on top of that. But again, kudos to you and your family, because that's a long. You know how sometimes one generation will build something and they pass it to the next generation and they mess it up. One person I think of is who that had the chicken and waffle in Atlanta, Gladys Knight, right? Like her son really messed up her business, and she tried to leave that for him to hopefully pass on to the future, but now that's been messed up.
Yeah, well, it's always been a treasured legacy in our family. And so
right.
I feel like it's my turn.
We're gonna keep it that way.
Yeah, we are.
So why is Southview also known as the African American city of the state?
I don't know that we're really known as that, but we had a historian named D.L. Henderson who wrote a book about Southview, and she did a marvelous job. It has a great index at the back of it. So if you're looking for someone in Black history, they're buried here, they might be, and they probably are in that book. So she took a long time to research it and write it, and she gave that name to her book. And so other than for her book, I don't know that we're known as that.
Oh, so that was the name of the book.
Yes, that's the name of the historical book about Southview.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that written?
I think she began writing it in 2004. I think she published it maybe in 2010, 2014, something like that.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the production that's coming up this weekend on the 21st and the following weekend on the 28th. You do this production. How long have you been doing the production, and why does Southview put on this yearly production of the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre?
Well, in 2006, the Coalition for Remembrance of the 1906 Race Massacre had a weekend-long kind of celebration and to acknowledge that it occurred.
Okay.
And brought back some of the relatives of people who were involved in it to Atlanta during that period. And they ended it here at Southview. There are several victims of the Atlanta Race Massacre buried here. And two of them are buried in areas where they have headstones. And so the culmination of the events that they did in 2006 occurred at Southview at the gravesite of George Wilder, who passed on the last night of the race massacre and was from Brownsville, which is just up the street from the cemetery.
Okay. So
since then, the coalition has asked us, we were always doing a historic tour in September and then one again in March. And so the coalition asked us, would we focus the one in September during the 1906 race riot period, which was September 22nd through 24. No, it was 4 nights, so 22nd through 28.
Okay.
26. Let me do my math. So it was Saturday night, which was the 22nd, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night. And Tuesday night is when they actually came to Brownsville, and Brownsville had armed themselves, expecting them to come in that direction.
Okay.
And they kind of put an end to the massacre.
Okay. Now because there is no city or area called Brownsville, correct? But I lived there for 21 years, and I don't remember a Brownsville.
No, I guess it's not called that anymore, but it's where the colleges were. So Clark
Okay.
University and the Gammon Theological Seminary were at what is now Carver High School, which is kind of at the corner of Jonesboro Road and University. So if you go down 85 and get off on University, you get near to Carver. And that Carver High School facility, their campus, is the actual campus where the Atlanta University Center was and Gammon Theological Seminary. Yeah. And so that area is where a lot of the professors lived, in that area around the school. And that's Browns Mill.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Brownsville. There is a Browns Mill Road that's on kind of the corner of Southview. I'm not sure it stretched back this far, but it was more on the area where McDonough Road runs into Jonesboro Road.
Okay. So why is it that this very large historical event is not very well known, especially to African Americans, especially the African Americans in Georgia?
They didn't teach it in the schools. Let's start there.
Right.
So there were racial tensions in Atlanta, and Atlanta was growing fast. And so there were a lot of poor white people and poor Black people moving to Atlanta after the Civil War. And Atlanta in 1906 was 115,000 people.
Okay.
And so the former slaves and former children of former slaves were looking for jobs, and they were competing for warehouse jobs and blue collar jobs with white people.
Right.
And so some of the white people thought that wasn't what they should be doing. They shouldn't have to lose a job to a Black person, to a former slave. So that caused tensions. Then at the time when 1906 started, the race massacre started, there were two gubernatorial candidates trying to be the Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia. Mm-hmm. It was Hoke Smith, who was the editor-in-chief of the Journal, and Clark Howell, who was the editor-in-chief of the Constitution. They were two different papers.
Right, exactly.
And so they were kind of stoking the racial tension in there. Neither one wanted Black people to vote. They both wanted to disenfranchise African Americans, which Hoke Smith won, and he did do that.
Yes.
After he won. And most Black people were Republicans. So the Black Republican Party was a big party in Atlanta. I think about 75% of the Black people in Atlanta were Republicans. They were the party of Lincoln.
That's a large percentage.
Mm-hmm. And they had a lot of power.
And for me in 2025, seeing the state of politics today, is very hard for me to imagine. One, that the Republican Party was 75% Negro, if you will, and two, that they yielded a lot of power, as you just stated. That blows my mind.
Well, this was the party of Lincoln. You know, Lincoln was a Republican. Lincoln freed the slaves. All the Black people had a picture of Lincoln in their household.
Okay.
So they were
I can see that.
Lincoln Republicans.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So, okay, because now I didn't want to talk about politics, but how did it shift so drastically to where we have very little political power? First of all, I don't even know how we got that much political power coming out of slavery. That's mind-boggling to me also. Unless it was our own towners, I just don't see how we gained that much power.
Well, Reconstruction happened right after slavery ended. And
Right.
Reconstruction was a time period where we had Black elected officials in national offices and in state offices, and Black men could vote
Right.
after slavery ended. Now, Black women could not, but Black men could vote, and they did vote. They voted in record numbers, and they elected county commissioners, and we had senators and congressmen in the federal offices that were African American during that period. So that ended fairly quickly.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
Right.
I could only imagine.
But Reconstruction was, a heyday for African Americans. There were schools that came into existence during that period. They were able to learn to read and write. They were able to open businesses, and they were politically active as well. So all of that happening in Atlanta, where they were used to white supremacy. And then there was a play in Atlanta that came in. It was called The Klansman with a C. And it was the forerunner to the movie that was, what's the name of it?
Birth of a
Nation. Yeah, Birth of a Nation came out in 1915. But in 1906 in Atlanta, there was a play that was based on the same Birth of a Nation.
Oh, you put me on to something just then. Because I saw during my research that there was a stage play called The Klansman.
Yeah. So
I had no idea it was connected to the Birth of a Nation.
Yeah. So there were these two newspapers with their editors competing for the gubernatorial Democratic nomination. Then we had two other white newspapers that came in, and they were yellow journalism. They were looking for sensational stories, and they were really ramping up the war to try to get people to read, the readership war. And then there were also two Black newspapers that were published in 1906 in Atlanta.
Okay.
With 115,000 people here. They had 6 newspapers that were dailies. So the larger newspapers were fighting for territory. And so to incite people to buy their newspapers, they were publishing stories about Black men raping white women.
Of course. That old trope.
Of course, the old trope. Same old thing. The Klansmen kind of produced that as well, or added to it. But so they had put in the newspaper about 4 white women being raped during the day in their homes and being molested or being whistled at, or kissing. Some Black men were supposed to have kissed the hand of a white woman. So these were the headlines in these newspapers that were really competing for money, and also competing for the nomination of their editors-in-chief. So with all of that rising up, and the middle class or working class white men losing jobs, the Black people are attacking our women, they're taking our jobs, Black people had businesses on Peachtree Street that were interspersed with the white businesses.
Right. They were together. They were together in the business district in
Right. Alonzo Herndon, which was the first Black millionaire in Atlanta, had been a slave. He had the Crystal Palace, which was a beautiful place for white men to come and get a haircut and get their face trimmed, or all those kind of tonsillar things to do by Black men. And so it was very popular. It was big. It had 14 chairs, and they could get a bath, and they could take care of themselves there. So there were Black businesses interspersed with white businesses, Black-owned businesses interspersed with white businesses. And the middle class or the working class population didn't like that. So after they published some of these stories, on that Saturday, September 22nd, a huge mob of over 1,000 white men and boys, armed, having sticks and guns and anything you can think of, knives, met at 5 Points in Atlanta. And they continued from 5 Points to break the windows in Black-owned businesses. They went into that barbershop and pulled out the boot black and killed him.
Right, yeah.
And laid his body up on the statue to Henry Grady. They beat up some other barbers there, and they tormented the city.
Yeah, they did. They went from community to community. Now, do you know what the significance was of taking the boot blacks? And I knew his name last year, but do you know the significance of them taking the body to the cemetery? I mean, to the statue of Henry Grady.
Right. Well, Henry Grady was supposed to have been a liberal mayor of Atlanta, that he started the phrase, the slogan, the New South.
Okay.
So, if you looked at what he did, you probably wouldn't think he was liberal by today's terms. But by that era's terms, Henry Grady was someone that they were mocking. They were like, yeah, you think the New South? Well, here's your New South. And so they did take 3 bodies of Black people that they had massacred and lean them up against a statue. So the next morning, that's what you found.
Oh, so it wasn't. See, I was thinking it was because Henry Grady was a proponent of white supremacy. So they were taking the body as some type of homage to his statue. But
No, it was the opposite. They were mocking him. They were taking those bodies there to say, yeah, here's your New South.
Interesting. Wow. So when you were mentioning before about they're raping our women, they're taking our jobs, that sounded awfully familiar to someone's campaign speech in 2016, in 2020.
So they say there's nothing new in this world.
I mean, it's literally the same playbook. And it's infuriating. I've done a lot of research into the history of this country, the government, our community, and our community has taken a lot of abuse from our racist step parents, if you will. And it doesn't get any easier to learn or hear about these stories. So I want to thank you for being here and educating our listeners on the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. Because a lot of people don't know about it. I've asked people my age that didn't know about it. I've asked my uncles, my aunts who are from Albany, Georgia, which is 3.5 hours from Atlanta. They never heard of it. So I'm guessing not too many people younger than myself is going to know about it. And so I think it's important for us to continue to have these conversations. I think it's important for Southview to do this historic piece that they're going to do. And please, if you're in town this weekend, the 21st and the 28th, please come check out the show. How do they get tickets to the show?
You don't need tickets. Just show up at 3 o'clock. It's open to the public and it's free. Keyword, free. Please come and learn our history.
It's good free education out here. But in all seriousness, we need this conversation because, as we know, first of all, one of the reasons people don't know about this is because, like you said, they don't put it in the history books. And for the most part, they try to erase it like they do with so much more of our history. And so that's why I think it's important for Southview Cemetery to tell the story. It's important for WCEG Network to tell the story. It's important for whoever is listening to this story to tell your friends, tell your children, tell your grandchildren. Like, this conversation needs to continue, because without the conversation, the history dies because they're taking it away.
Right. Well, they had a strategy not to perpetuate it. They didn't want to perpetuate this image of Atlanta. They didn't want to say it's a race riot. The newspapers in Paris carried the race massacre, and they said it was the beginning of a race war in the South. They didn't want Atlanta to be stained by its racial segregation policies, and so that the elite white people and the elite Black people too came together and met after the race massacre was over and conspired together to not let this message get out, to sweep it under the rug and maybe it'll go away. And they wanted to have the idea, like they came up with in the 60s, a city too busy to hate.
So, first of all, shout out to the newspaper in France for being on top of
The New York Times had it.
Race Massacre, New York Times. But again, if this event was so global when it happened in 1906, it should be on the lips and tongue of just about every African American who was around during that period, especially the ones in Atlanta who may have been directly affected by it. Like, I feel like their future generations should have, even if it's just or verbally, just keep the story going.
Well, I don't know about your ancestors, but my grandparents, who I grew up with, they didn't want to tell you anything scary. They didn't want to tell you the stories of our family in slavery. They didn't want to tell you about, Jim Crow. They were of the generation, I was born in 1960. So they were born, my grandmother was born in 1920. No, my mom was born in 1920. My grandmother was born in 1880. So they didn't want you to know anything scary. They wanted you to have an idea that it's a beautiful world and you shouldn't be afraid. And, I suppose they had their reasons, but I would ask my grandparents things like, so what was the scariest thing that happened to you? Oh, baby, we don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about something else. So I think that with that attitude, they wanted you to live the dream. They didn't want you to be burdened by the past. And I really think that contributed to us not knowing.
If you're not burdened by the past, you're going to repeat the past.
As we have seen, as we are seeing. But I really do think that was an attitude of people who came out of slavery. They didn't want to tell their children, the children of slaves, they didn't want to talk about how they got beaten. They would whitewash it as much as the white media would whitewash it.
And that's what leads to this mentality today of, oh, racism is a thing of the past. It's been gone for however long you want to say it's been gone.
We're post-racial. What does that mean? We thought we were post-racial with Obama, and now we know we're not. Okay.
And I don't want to disparage the ancestors because I know they went through a lot. I don't want to disparage some of the elders that are still here because I know they went through a lot. And I know that because I've studied the history of this country. It's just hard for me to hear that when I know how things continue to perpetuate if the truth is not known. And that's one of the reasons they're working so hard today to continue to erase Black history.
Yeah, this history doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel good if you're Black. It doesn't make you feel good if you're white. It doesn't make you feel good to know that a mob of white men came and slaughtered Black people in downtown Atlanta. So I'm not sure that this would meet the requirements for history now, because history's got to be something that makes you feel good, but this is the truth.
It is the truth. It is the truth.
So
And
I believe in the truth.
I so do I.
And I believe as ugly and dirty as the truth might be, you need to tell it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of ugly, dirty truth.
It is. And history is ugly and dirty.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The real history. But I don't know what kind of history that's going to happen soon. But the real history, you know, the wars, they weren't all cut and dry. There was bad acting on either side of any war you can think of. The wars we have going on now, you know, it's not all cut and dry. But, you know, that's just one woman's opinion.
Okay. Another question from our audience is, how do you educate your children and grandchildren on America's violent history?
I tell them the truth. We come out to the cemetery, we talk about who's buried here. These stories shouldn't just make you feel uncomfortable. They should inspire you.
Yes.
These people went through horrible things to excel. If they can do it, I can do it. So you shouldn't get beaten down by the terror that occurred. You should get inspired to keep it from happening again.
Yeah.
And I think you have to know that terror, but that's what I teach my kids and my grandkids. We talk about Martin Luther King, but yes, we talk about all the foot soldiers that got to get the first library card in Georgia, encouraged 10,000 people to register to vote, Black people to register to vote in Georgia during the 20s and 30s. So these are stories that, yes, they came out of hardship, but they came out of hardship through perseverance, through education. And so we need to know these stories, not just to feel bad, but to be inspired to move forward.
I agree. I fully agree. Yes, let's be inspired to move forward. Let's make the truth. You don't have to make it be anything. Just let it be the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's normalize the truth again. How about that? Because in the days of fake news and fake media, and now we have
fake history,
super AI that you can create any type of video from with anybody's face and anybody. You don't know what's real and what's not anymore. You have to. I know for me, whenever I see any type of video now, I'm like, I have to do twice and triple as much research now just so I can verify and make sure that the video is a real video, because that's how good this AI stuff is getting.
Yeah. And I think that's a problem for our next generation with all the conspiracy theories out there and AI, and you don't know what's up and what's down. You don't know what's right and what's wrong. It's hard to dig through all of that to find something that's concrete.
Right. And what that does is make people not want to dig. If I got to go through all that and do all this and dig through this extra, I already don't want to dig. And then you're gonna make me extra dig? Like, okay.
It's a different world.
What did George Baldwin said? To be conscious and aware in America is to be angry almost all the time. Like, if you're aware and you know stuff that's going on in this country and what's still going on, and I've made this plea before to my listeners, if you have not researched Project 2025, please do so. You don't have to read the whole 900-page thing. Get the Cliff Notes. That's what I did. But the Cliff Notes will give you the full picture, and you need to start preparing for this full picture. We're what, 9 months in to this current administration?
Can you believe it?
They haven't even scratched the surface of what they want to do with Project 2025. And if you don't prepare yourself, you're going to be put in a situation where you're going to be repeating history in the worst way, in the way that grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-greats didn't want to tell their children. So, and I'm not saying that to be fearful. I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. This is a real thing. They came up with Project. Thank you, man. Tell the truth. They came up with Project 2025 25 years ago. and now they're just implementing. So please educate yourself. Matter of fact, I need to do a whole show on Project 2025. That is what I need to do. I need to educate my listeners and everyone else about this thing because it is horrible. It's not good at all.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to WCEG Network. This is Conversations in Education. I am your host, Vincent Cheeks. I am on with the president of Southview Cemetery, Winnie Hemphill. We're having an in-depth discussion about the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. I encourage you to do your own research on the topic. You may discover something that we missed here today on the show. Okay, Miss Winnie. Who was Frank Smith and why was his death classified as a lynching, even though he was not hung?
Well, Frank Smith was a Western Union delivery person. And when Western Union first started hiring Black people, Frank Smith was one of those that he hired. He was well respected in the Black community. He was well respected by Western Union. And he was on his bicycle making a delivery. And he happened to be downtown on the Forsyth Bridge or close there too. And they were grabbing every Black person that they saw. So they grabbed Frank Smith because he was there doing his job on his daily errands. They stabbed him, they shot him, and they threw him over the Forsyth Bridge. The definition of lynching is not the same as the definition of being hung or hanged, tying a rope around your neck. The Equal Justice Initiative uses the definition of the word lynching to refer to the brutal public acts of terror and torture that primarily targeted African Americans, often involving mob violence and a lack of state intervention. Where were the police? So they use the word lynching not just to mean putting a noose around someone's neck and hanging them from something high.
Yeah.
And that was done too during the 1906 Race Massacre, but they determined many of the deaths that occurred, and there were 27 documented deaths, and we believe more than that that were undocumented. That occurred. All of those were lynchings. All of those were brutal public acts of terror and torture targeting African Americans.
I have a follow-up question to that, but first let me say it just started raining here in South Florida, so if my computer goes out or whatever, that's why. You just posed the question, where were the police? So is there an answer for that, or no, we don't?
Well, the police in some situations were part of it, part of the mob. They were standing by watching the mob, or they were, sitting in their library and
participating.
Some were participating. Some were letting it pass by, and they were in their office reading a book or something and not going outside to stop it. I don't know that the police force could have stopped it, but they weren't even trying.
And from what I read, nothing was done from a political standpoint until the mayor made a call to the state troops and brought them in. But that was almost
2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
and what really stopped it? It started raining. So
they didn't want to get wet they didn't want to get wet while they were on a murder spree.
Exactly. They didn't want to have to walk in the mud.
And the mayor, whose house was downtown at the time, said he didn't hear any of this going on. People being shot, brutally murdered, screams, hangings. He didn't hear any of this. He's just sound asleep in his bed like a little newborn baby.
Yeah, and his house was where the Westin is now, the downtown Westin.
Yep, by the park.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he was in the mix, but he wasn't in the mix.
But he wasn't in the mix. He was.
Yeah.
Landlord's accountant's sheet. Okay. And so another person I want to mention who died during the massacre is a gentleman by the name of Zeb Long. And I want to shout out Mr. William Potts for putting me on to Zeb Long because I had missed Zeb in my research. But Mr. Potts, he was excited about us doing this show today when he put up a picture of himself at the Zeb Long Memorial picture by. So thank you, Mr. Potts, for not letting me forget ancestor Zeb Long. But Zeb Long was a 30-year-old man. He was arrested for incendiary talk. I want to let that simmer and sink in for him. He was arrested for incendiary talk. Now, I was a criminal justice major. I went to FAMU in 1993. And I, to my recollection, do not remember there being a law about incendiary talk. And his incendiary talk was simply him verbalizing his displeasure with how Negroes were being treated during that time. So he gets arrested. They take him to some flimsy wooden shack. Later on in the night, a mob of about 50 men, they came and kidnapped him from the shack.
The jail shack.
And they lynched him from a tree. And I think 2 days later, his body was found. And so this mob was just indiscriminately killing whoever they came across.
Yes.
Zeb had nothing to do with whatever these fake news stories was about raping white women, still ain't doing none of that. The man bought freedom of speech, I thought. He voiced his displeasure about what was going on in our community, and this is what happened to him. Unfortunately, it's still going on today. I don't know if you are familiar. There was 2 lynchings yesterday in Mississippi. The first one, his name was Travion Reed. He was 21 years old. His body was found hanging from a tree on the campus of Delta State University around 7 a.m. yesterday morning. I guess there had been some type of brief investigation, but the deputy coroner, Murray Rourke, the DSU police chief, Mike Pillar, and DSU president, Dan Ennis, all say that there's no foul play in the hanging of this young black man. Even though there was all of this hateful speech after Charlie Kirk got killed last week, there was all this hateful speech about fight back. There was a video going around at the Charlie Kirk Memorial of a bunch of white men jumping up and down, screaming, "White men fight back, white men fight back." I don't know, I guess they're trying to pump themselves up for a race war or something. Then let's not forget that there were threats of violence to HBCU campuses after Charlie Kirk was killed. Alabama State, Hampton University, Virginia State, Clark Atlanta, Spelman are among some of the few that received threats, and thankfully nothing happened in those campuses. Condolences and prayers for the family of Travion Reed. But yeah, they're saying there's no foul play at this time, and that's just it. The other gentleman was Corey Zukadis. He was a white man found hanging in a wooded area near Ameristar Casino in Vicksburg, Mississippi. There isn't much information on that either. They're still investigating that. When I learned about Travion yesterday, of course, my mind was all over the place because of the Charlie Kirk stuff and because of all the anger and vitriol that happened after that. So, I never do well when they say a black person hung himself and there's no foul play. That's the immediate conclusion, is that there's no foul play. It hasn't even been it's been a day and a half. And their conclusion is there's no foul play. I don't even think you can talk to his friends, all his friends in a day and a half to get a complete story of him and who he was and where he was going and where he's supposed to be doing. But needless to say, that is the case. They don't have much on neither one of these hangings. But I'll say this. I need everyone to be vigilant. I need everyone to have their head on a swivel. Because of what happened with Charlie Kirk last week, because of the incendiary things that have been stoked by this administration and the people that support the administration, I need you to be safe and be aware of your surroundings at all times. And especially the young people, please talk to the younger people in your generation. There was earlier this year, there was a TikToker or someone, social influencer, talking about, I'm going to go into a sundown town at night to see if it's really a sundown town and see what happens. That's ignorant. Me, as a Black man, being from a small town, Albany, Georgia, knowing there are surrounding sundown towns around Albany, Georgia, y'all need to take that stuff seriously. It's not some urban myth. It's not some say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times. No, this is real life, and people are dying every day, and so we need to be vigilant with ourselves and with our families, especially the younger generations, because they live in this post-racial society. Okay, Ms. Hemphill, who were Luther Price and David Howard, and what role did they play in helping to bring the massacre to an end?
Well, Luther Judson Price was the first Black postmaster in Atlanta, and he was the postmaster for Brownsville.
Okay.
And so his office was down near the corner of McDonough Road and Jonesboro Road, in this area that we were talking about, where the Carver schools are, Carver High schools are.
Yeah.
And so he was respected, and he ran the post office for that area.
Okay.
David T. Howard was a well-known mortician. And so he shipped in, David T. Howard would order caskets that would come through Luther Judson Price's post office.
Okay.
And during this period, everyone knew that Black people were not supposed to have arms at all during this period.
Right. Absolutely.
So Black people that lived in urban Atlanta were not to carry arms. And during this period, they knew, the Black people in Brownsville knew, that at some point that white mob would probably be knocking on their doorstep, because they had come down through Decatur Street, the city of Atlanta. They'd gone through Summerhill, which is a neighboring Black community. Then they had gone to East Point and hanged somebody in East Point. So they were shipping in guns, allegedly, through these caskets so that they would arm the people in Brownsville.
Yeah.
And so when the mob came to Brownsville, they were met with armed Negroes. And there was a shootout, and there were at least one white person was killed. One of the police officers was killed.
Okay.
And so they took Luther Judson Price, and there's a middle school down here named for him.
Price Middle School.
And there's also a middle school named for David T. Howard.
Okay.
And both of them used to be high schools, so they've got a real active alumni association. David T. Howard was a school that Martin Luther King Jr. graduated from. So when they defended Brownsville, and they turned back the mob, and people in Brownsville are really credited with stopping the riot, stopping the massacre. Because when they met down here in this area, they were armed and they were ready.
Awesome. I love it. I love the shipping the guns in the caskets. That is genius.
Mm-hmm. And you know that there were many people that worked on the railroad. There were porters, Pullman porters that were African American. They said the Pullman porters were putting the guns in the caskets. You know, it was a community effort to try to really keep the mob from going further south.
Teamwork, dreamwork.
And they did it. They stood and defended their homes.
I love it. And so, just for those of you out there who are listening and who are planning to come to the production, please come. Yours truly will be playing David T. Howard, one of the heroes that turned back the mob. So please come and support if you can. It is a It's a wonderful production. It's very well done. I really, really appreciate y'all doing it. It's family friendly, fun, and education. So you can
And
bring
it's free. And it's Sunday afternoon. It should be a beautiful Sunday at 3 o'clock, September 21st, and again on September 28th. Please come join us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we got 2 or 3 minutes left. So what happened in the immediate aftermath of the massacre?
In the immediate aftermath, they decided that they were not going to have this put a blemish on Atlanta. And the two Black newspapers were The Voice and the Atlanta Georgian. So
Okay.
John Temple Graves wrote an article about how it was really caused by Black people.
The massacre was caused by Black people?
Yes. And so J. Max Barber, who was the editor of The Voice, put out a scathing statement about how no, Black people were the victims, not the perpetrators. He was called in by the head of the police, and he was told that if that letter went out, it was vile slander of Atlanta, and whoever wrote it would serve time on a chain gang. So J. Max Barber moved The Voice to Chicago.
Wow.
Some real history here.
Because I've heard of The Voice in Chicago.
In Chicago. It used to be in Atlanta before the 1906 race riot.
Huh.
Because he was putting out the truth in the statement. He was told, yeah, you're going to be arrested and put on a chain gang if that goes out.
Man had to move cross country.
Had to move to Chicago. And he wasn't the only one. A lot of Black people left. W.E.B. Du Bois was in Alabama when it happened. He took a train back and sat on his front porch with a gun in his lap. And then he had to protect his wife and his child. They moved. They left Atlanta after that.
As many left the South and migrated north.
Yeah.
And while we're speaking of Chicago, I want to shout out my friend John Williams. I was there Saturday for his 50th birthday party. I just want to throw that out there. It was a great time. I had to break up some of this heaviness. Man, it's so heavy. So what I saw happen after the aftermath, what I found in my research was that a great deal of Black wealth was diminished. Because a lot of businesses had to close. Like you just stated, a lot of people left Atlanta, left Georgia altogether. And so a lot of the Black wealth that was being created at that time was just stripped and diminished. Their properties were taken. Like it was a lot. And you mentioned this earlier. Go ahead, you were gonna say that.
Black businesses reestablished on Auburn Avenue where they could be together for security.
Yeah.
To protect each other.
That's how the Sweet Auburn.
This was the beginning of Sweet Auburn.
Because the business district that Blacks and whites used to share together after the massacre, Blacks had to move out and do their own thing, which might not be a bad thing to consider.
They had to respond.
Just saying. It also said that in 1907, newly elected Governor Hope Smith, who you mentioned earlier, swiftly fulfilled his campaign promise to disempower the Black vote. He signed a constitutional amendment that imposed a literary test as a requirement for voting. That amendment disenfranchised the Black vote for 50 years. One piece of legislation disenfranchised our vote and took away our power for 50 years. It's amazing. It's sad. It's infuriating. Like I'm feeling all of these things right now because there's no Atlanta is already Atlanta used to, when I moved to Atlanta, it was known as the Black Man, right? Like they said it was the land of job opportunities. You would go there and you could do well and prosper. And that was true. When I went to Atlanta, that was exactly the case. So my question for you, Winnie, is how did Atlanta go from all of that racial tension in 1906 and prior and after to somehow becoming the Black Mecca during the 90s?
Well, the response, the Black community responded by the civil rights movement and the precursors to the civil rights movement. The attitudes toward white supremacy were the same. They found, I guess, more civil, more acceptable, more mainstream ways of expressing it. But we are still the cradle of the civil rights movement.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Which even with that history, I just don't understand why the Atlanta Race Massacre is not more included in the overarching, overwhelming greatness of all the Black progress that we've made. It should definitely be included in the conversation because it was a huge historical event.
And it had significant repercussions.
Significant repercussions for years and years and years. That is crazy to me. But it wasn't just Atlanta. We know what happened in Tulsa,
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Wilmington, North Carolina, Rosewood, Florida. There's a list. I got a list from somebody on the internet, and it had to be at least 50 to 75. Long, like all across the country.
Were any of them taught in schools? Did you learn about it in Florida or in Albany, Georgia?
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
American history, in my book, had 2 pages on Black history when I was in high school.
Right. Yeah. It didn't get many more pages after when I was there. Let me tell
And when
you.
my kids went to high school, history was taught by the football coaches. They didn't know anything about history. You know, it was copies of mimeograph things. They had one teacher who actually taught history, all the rest of them. So history, you know, I agree with that people should know STEM, that science, math, technology, all that's important to know. But history is also important to know.
Yeah, because we about to be repeating. And because so when you see it coming back around, you'll know, oh, this is what they did in 06 and in 1920. No, listen, we are going back there. That is what they're doing. Like they're going back to the days where they're gonna start arresting minorities for incendiary talk. Like, what even is that? You know, and if you haven't, you mentioned The Birth of a Nation earlier. If you're of melanated hue, you need to watch The Birth of a Nation. Because we all have heard the term propaganda, and we all know that the United States government will do and say anything to keep its position of power. But The Birth of a Nation was America's first full-length feature film, the very first. And in that film, it depicted Black men as brutes and beasts with an insatiable appetite to want to rape and harm white women. And it showed the Klan as like the superheroes of the movie who came to save the white damsel in distress from the Black brute beast and kill them and hang them and burn them and send pieces of them to their relatives across the country. Yeah, this stuff happens. So we need to be diligent about keeping this history at the forefront. They're definitely trying to take us back to a place where it's not going to be good for anybody of a melanated hue. If you're not a rich white man, it's going to be very bad for you. And the only reason they need white women is so they can procreate and create more rich white men. Okay, so we need to be aware of what's really going on, and start coming up with a plan for ourselves, for our families. I'm gonna talk about farming in a minute with my scholar of the week. We need to start growing our own food. We need to start Hemphill mentioned earlier, we need to start co-opting, putting our monies together so we can build together, so we can protect each other better and be safe, because it's gonna get really crazy out here. And I'm jump topic, but if you go back to last week and when Charlie Kirk got shot, that video was on replay all day. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They kept showing it over and over and over. And I couldn't understand why they kept showing this man getting killed on social media over and over again. But then the more I thought about it, I thought about they're trying to stoke the flames of a race war. Trump wants there to be a race war so he can suspend elections and extend his power for however long he wants to extend his power. And then, you know, the two hangings from yesterday, like there's a lot going on. And you just need to be aware. And if you're unaware, please educate yourself. Project 2025, it is here. And if they can help it, it's not going anywhere. Anywhere. I don't know if y'all heard y'all presidents say, if I did this right, you'll never have to worry about voting again. Okay? So this is a long-term plan that's currently being executed. I don't feel like the other side is doing enough to stop it. So there's going to be a lot more craziness coming down. So just be prepared. Mental health breaks. I say this all the time. Don't just sit and watch the news all day. Don't just sit and be on your phone, absorbing all this negative energy. It's constantly negative, and that wears on you mentally and emotionally. Take a break. Go do some person-to-person interaction. Go talk to your bestie, your uncle, your auntie. I know you got some elders in the family you can go talk to, sit at their feet, learn some things. Just get ready and prepared for what's coming. Don't get off. Please. Okay, Miss Winnie, we're getting ready to get out of here. Can you please give the dates and the times one more time?
All right, it's going to be at Southview Cemetery, 1990 Jonesboro Road, Southeast Atlanta, 30315. It's going to be on Sunday, September 21st at 3 o'clock. And again on Sunday, September 28th at 3 o'clock. Admission is free and open to the public. Come and enjoy a nice afternoon and learn some history and be inspired by some stories.
Yes, please come. Check out your boy. I'll be there, Mr. David T. Howard.
And he does a great job.
In the flesh, I'm looking forward to it. Yet last year was my first time doing it, so I was honored when you invited me back this year. That means I must have did something. So thank you for the opportunity, Winnie. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here today and helping to educate the masses about the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. And I want to say this before I go, because did you hear about the all-white town that's being built, Winnie?
No.
There's an all-white town being built in Arkansas. And of course, Black people had a lot to say about that. So then one of the white guys working on building the town, he made a video making the statement that I don't understand why Black people are so mad at us building our own community. We would be so happy if Black people were able to build their own community. We would just let them go and be in peace. That's the sound of a very uneducated, ignorant person. Because clearly he doesn't know about all the towns that we just mentioned who are fully thriving, fully self-sustained, fully run by Black people.
As long as you're not successful, it's okay.
You know what? That's the key. That's because if we're successful, that means we're taking something from them, right?
That's the problem. Yeah.
And I don't understand how we're taking something from them when they have it. They have the most money in the world, the most millionaires, the most mansions, like they have all the political power. So, but I do know that they're nervous, they're concerned, because by 2045, white people were predicted to be the minorities in this
Mhm.
country. So I think that's why a lot of the 2025 is going on right now. And it's like, we got to get them out. We got to get our people in, and we got to grow us. And so while they're definitely making plans, we need to be making our own plans.
We do. We do.
And it doesn't have to be to the level of their, but it has to be a level of self-preservation and the safety of your family, because things are being riled up and incited by not it. Look, Charlie Kirk was just, again, the tip of the iceberg. There are many Charlie Kirks, Nick Fuentes, and all these other far right people. And I don't get into politics like that, but I know who these people are, and I know what they're planning. So I suggest you do the same thing.
I just have to throw this nugget out there for people to think about.
You've been throwing nuggets all day.
So the whole 1906 race riot was really started, the thing that knocked it over the edge, the piece of hay that tilted it, was because they were saying that Black men were raping white women. But all through slavery, white men were raping Black women. I mean, that was part of the culture. That's why my hue is lighter than it might have been if not. So,
Absolutely.
did we ever have any kind of repercussion from that? If we are protecting women, did we protect Black women during slavery? No. But now that it's white women in 1906, there's a mob.
Right. Yeah.
And a massacre.
A massacre.
It's just interesting. The status of people by race and ethnicity is down in history, throughout American history. It's interesting.
It is interesting. And one of the commenters said they was raping the men too. Don't forget the butt breaking. But you're right. You're absolutely right. All right. With that, we're gonna get ready to get out of here. But first, I have to do my scholar week. All right. This week's scholar is 10-year-old Kendall Ray Johnson. At age 3, Kendall started planting collard greens with her great-grandmother. 4 years later, she became the youngest USDA certified farmer in the country. I don't know what it takes to become a USDA certified farmer, but I know it takes a lot more than what a 10-year-old should be able to become. Okay. And so she is the youngest. She has made history as being the youngest USDA certified farmer in the country. At 10 years old, she earned a full ride agricultural innovation scholarship to South Carolina State University. Unknown, okay, to have happened ever. So at 10 years old, she had a full ride scholarship, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this young lady does in her future. Her dream is to own 180 acres of land. Okay. So shout out to Kendall Ray Johnson. And her quote that she said is to keep growing, keep being amazing, and you do you. What a great way to end the show on words from a very wise young woman. So thank you to our listening audience for tuning in today. Thank you to my guest, Ms. Winifred Hemphill. And thank you, Penny Rogers, for these 10 years you have given me. I'm looking forward to another 10 years and beyond. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Oh, one question for you, Winnie. Do you have time to run lines after we get off? Or you got
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. All right. With that being said, thank you for tuning in to WCEG Network. This has been Conversations in Education. Until next month, peace and blessings. Peace.